Hey guys, another math video for you today. This one focuses on using logic to solve equations. And so our learning target here is that I can solve equations using logic and the concept of operations. There are some prior skills that you kind of need to know before we can do this stuff. And so the first thing is that you know that addition and subtraction undo each other, and that you know that multiplication and division undo each other as well. Those are basically the only two concepts that we need to know. We're going to start with using logic to solve equations with addition. Now, I'm just going to take this example over here and just refer back to our preserving equality stuff. So if we have this equation 38 equals 8 plus x, and I know that I want to get rid of, preserving equality would say that I want to get rid of the 8 on both sides. So then I would end up with, my next line would be like 38 minus 8 equals 8 plus x minus 8. So that would leave me with x on the right side, and then 38 minus 8 is 30. And you can double check that 8 plus 30 is indeed 38. Using logic to solve an equation would say, well, I know that this says 38 equals 8 plus x, and so to figure out what I need to add to 8 to get 38, I would subtract 8. Because what we're trying to do is think about how addition and subtraction are related, right? So then my next line would just be 38 minus 8 is going to equal x. So I take 8 away from 38 to find out what I'm going to add to 8. So it's looking closely at the equation and then figuring out logically the step that would make sense to solve it. So we're trying to solve these equations in a bit of a quicker way. And so again, what that would be is 30 equals x. And so these ones, all these examples here would be using addition in the equation. And so the operation that undoes addition, again, is subtraction. And so each of these times, we're going to be using subtraction to undo some sort of addition. So in this example, 21 equals x plus 12. Logically speaking, I know that I need to take 12 away from 21 to find out what x is going to be equal. And so my next line would be 21 minus 12 equals x. And when I take 12 away from 21, I end up with 9. And again, you can check that out. 9 plus 12 is 21. This last one here, x plus 22 equals 33. Logically speaking, I would need to take 22 away from 33 because, again, addition undoes subtraction. So I would end up with x equals 33 minus 22, and then x equals 11. These are really like the quickest ways that we can solve these equations with pen and paper. At this point, if you want to pause the video, you can work on number 1 in the workbook on page 79, and then unpause it and pick up the video as we keep going. So the next concept that we're going to look at is using logic to solve equations with subtraction. Now you'll notice that all these equations do use subtraction, or all of them, both of them. And so just be reminded that to undo subtraction, we have to use addition. And so if we want to undo a subtraction here, we have to use addition, and we have to use addition on both sides. And we can say like, well, if I add 15 to this side, then I can find out what x is going to be equal to. And so my next line would look like x equals 62, again, plus 15, because I'm trying to use logic and undo operations. And then so 62 and 15 ends up being 77. And again, you can double check that 77 minus 15 indeed equals 62. This one I have to undo the minus 21 with a plus 21. I just want to do it to the one side here because I'm just using logic. So I would say 73 plus 21 is going to equal x. And then 73 and 21 is 94. So that's how I would use logic to solve equations with subtraction. And again, at this point, you can pause the video and work on number 2 in the workbook, also on page 79. So there's a reminder here. I used orange ink. It's showing up okay. But it says division is often written in fractional form. So again, I have some examples here. 12 divided by 4 is the same thing as writing 12 over 4. Notice I've used an equal sign, which means that this side is means the same thing as this side. 15 over 5 is the same, or sorry, 15 divided by 5 is the same thing as 15 over 5. And then here I've used a variable, but x divided by 3 is the same thing as x over 3. And so at this point, what you can do is practice number 3 real quick in the workbook. It's on page 80. And then after you've done that, you can unpause the video and then keep going with me. The next step would be, if we're using different operations, we're at multiplication. So here we would be using logic to solve equations that use multiplication. And again, we remember that to undo multiplication, it takes division. And so what I would write here is x equals 56 divided by 7. That's going to undo that. And then x is going to be 8, because I know that 7 times 8 is 56. That's how I could check that. Over here, I know that if I divide 48 by 2, then I can figure out what x is going to be equal to. And so that's what I would write. And 48 divided by 2 is 24. And so I can go double check that 2 times 24 does equal 48. Likewise, this time I'm going to undo a times 7 with the divide by 7. So I'd have 14 divided by 7 is going to equal x, which means that 2 is going to equal x. And then at this point, you can pause it and work on number 4. Those questions will line up with what we just talked about there. And the last one, the last operation, is using logic to solve equations that involve division. And again, to undo division, we have to use multiplication. And so if this is some number divided by 3 equals 6, I know that I can multiply 6 by 3 to find out what that number is. So I'd end up with this line, x equals 6 times 3. So x is going to equal 18. Notice, I haven't really commented on this, but I use like a cursive x for my variables because I don't want to get confused with the multiplication symbol. So you'll always see like a little sort of curved line in my x's. Again, remember that this means division. This is x divided by 2, or x over 2 means x divided by 2. But I know that if I multiply 5 times 2, that I can figure out what x is going to be equal to. So that's what I would write on my next line. 5 times 2 is going to equal x. So that means that 10 is going to be x. And again, you can check that. 10 over 2, 10 divided by 2 equals 5. And lastly, if I multiply 6 times 4, that's going to tell me what x is equal to. So I end up with x equals 6 times 4, which means that x is going to equal 24. And again, you can double check. 24 divided by 4 is indeed 6. And so at this point, there's only number 5 left in the workbook on page 80. And so you can finish that stuff up. And then that is all for this video.